That'd be awesome.
Okay. Are we recording?
We are.
Okay, so I'm going to take attendance. Trustee Israel?
Here.
Trustee Ross?
Here.
Member Albrecht?
Here.
Member Badgley?
Here.
Member Bleeker?
Here.
Member Chen?
Here.
Member Lisco?
Here.
Member Franklin?
Here.
Member Friedman? Member Hirsch?
Here.
Member Cole?
Here.
Member Letter? Member Matheson?
Here.
Member Papard?
Here.
Member Patak? Member Rago?
Here.
Member Robson? Member Skovic?
Here, sorry.
Member,
Here's a hard one. I'm leaving at
who was
6:30.
just, was that was Member Skovic who just said here?
My church.
Yes, sorry, just logged in. Thanks.
That's okay. Member Stash?
Here.
Member Vile? And Member Weiss?
Here.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to take a quick moment to introduce a new staff member present for Development and Planning Services. Our new Deputy Director, Chan Yu, is present in here, and so some of you may see him in some breakout rooms.
Hey, everyone.
All right. Now we're going to open it up for public comment for members of the public who want to speak about items that are not, well, items pertaining to the environmental thing. If any members of the public would like to speak, please do so now. But we are going to, depending on the number of people who want to speak, your limit will be 2 minutes.
Oh, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Am I
who's speaking?
audible? This Yakov Simkin.
Okay, would you like to make a comment?
Question more like, or maybe comment. I just want to check how transparent this process will be for the public to see what options are considered to reach 7.5% reduction in miles, and what kind of limitations would be applied. Are you planning to publish drafts?
Yeah, the draft plan, and if the consultant Ted Redmond wants to speak further to this, but the plan, once it is done being worked on, will be posted on the village website and promoted so that it'll be easily findable for everybody.
And would be some kind of comments, written comments accepted for those, or
There'll be a
draft?
comment period, yeah.
When was going to be the first comment period?
Ted, which workshop, at which point are we doing that?
Yeah, so it'll be, I'm sorry, I don't have the dates really frontal in my mind here. I wasn't ready for that question, but it'll be after this next workshop, which is in March. We will begin the sort of whittling down of all of the actions and creating of a draft plan. And so that should be available for review. I think we were targeting early May, but please understand that to be preliminary because the dates are not in front of my head here.
So there is a specific date for, I mean, not specific time, but specific step to allow public comments.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly. And if you're definitely interested in being notified, if you could perhaps send a note to Michaela if that's okay, and we'll make
Yep.
sure we get you on a list. And when it's ready, we'll send out. It'll have like a link to a website. You can go find it, and we can notify you.
Sounds good. And do the commission created has a jurisdictions over the whole Northbrook? Is it done on a Northbrook locally only, or neighboring villages also in sync with what Northbrook gonna do? Or Cook County, for instance, is it Cook County jurisdiction? Because Northbrook may not have a full control of territory, geographical territory in Northbrook.
This is a plan for Northbrook specifically. If Cook County wants to partake and adopt, they are welcome to review it. It will become a public document. That is the intent of this process.
But is there a specific communication interface with approval for Cook County? Because Cook County controls some of the land inside the Northbrook, right? So that means they won't be able to make a decision without approval.
We will be able to make decisions for those areas within the corporate boundaries of Northbrook.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other public comments?
Can you hear me? This is Sandra.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm an architect and a sustainability consultant, and a member of the Illinois Green Board Alliance, and we have a strategic plan, which I would love to share with you as well. And I'm getting up to speed on that, and I'm just excited that you're all doing this. So happy to be part of it. And I'm sorry I came late to the party, but I've been working really hard full time until December. So now I'm trying to get more involved.
Thank you for attending.
I'll say hello. This is Doug Gerleman. I'm just here to kind of watch what's going on. I'm working with the Northbrook Garden Club and with several other regional environmental groups, trying to get them to plant more large rooted plants, prairie plants, to absorb atmospheric carbon, because everything I read said that that's a critical feature. I mean, trees are wonderful, but we can go beyond trees. We can go to different kinds of prairie plants in particular, and even the fungus. And so I'm working with these various groups just to let them know what's available. And I'll just try to keep up with you guys, see what's happening. Thank you very much.
Any other public comment? Okay, thank you. I believe, Ted, do you want to walk us through what we're going to do in our sub-teams this evening?
You betcha. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for really robust work. I was really impressed with the thoroughness that I saw each of the sub-teams going through their thoughts on identifying potential actions that they were interested in discussing, and coming up with some new actions. So there was a lot of robust work that's happened. So thank you very much for that. What happened was, since you guys completed your efforts here last week on the Action Finder tools, what we've done was, first, we made a backup copy of exactly the way they looked to us on Friday morning, I think it was. So we made a backup copy so that those still exist exactly as whoever the last person to work on them looked at it. And then we created a new copy, and we created a sort of a shortened list, a shorter version. And basically all we did with that was we first attempted to take all of the potential actions and organize them based on the strategies, the overall strategic goals that we talked about way back in December, so that those actions have a little bit more of an organization to them now. And then any action that looked like either perhaps it was very appropriate for another sub-team, because that happens sometimes. Something comes up on the buildings sub-team that's really actually a great green space strategy, for instance. So we identified actions that maybe should be shuttled over between the groups and then flagged those as they showed up. And then any action which really is kind of a duplicate, we took those actions which are duplicative and we turned them, made them red, and we dropped them down to the bottom. So they're still there if anybody's interested. But we try to create sort of a short list, a consolidated list of the various ideas that have come up. And so tonight's process, now we're going to start. So what we've been doing to date is we've been expanding. So we've been just generating ideas, brainstorming, etc. And so now we're going to start to contract and to refine those ideas and to start to create more prioritization over actions and strategies that we feel good about for Northbrook, whether it's capacity and so forth, and how we want to start to whittle those down. And so tonight, what we're going to do is the sub-teams, when we break into the sub-teams, the task before us is to begin reviewing each of those actions collaboratively against those strategy screening criteria that we identified back in December. So those criteria, if you don't recall, there were 5 of them. One is support. So how would this action be supported within the community? The impact of the implementation of the action, how much impact, both in terms of climate impact as well as other co-benefits, perhaps. The potential for success of that action, the affordability of the action, and overall cost to benefit of the action. And so what we want to do is we want to go through as many of those actions as we can this evening, and ultimately we want to hit all of them that's in the short list. And on each one of those criteria, we want to review them 1 to 5. So 1 is, we don't think this action would perform very well on that particular criteria. A 5 is, we think that action would probably be excellent in that criteria. And of course, a 2, 3, and a 4 between there, depending on your feeling on that. And so what I want to sort of reiterate here is that this review process is one of the ways that we're going to start whittling down the actions. We're also, for those actions that have GHG reduction potentials, we're also modeling those reductions at the strategic level and specific action level where it's appropriate. So that'll be another layer. This is an attempt at trying to help you zero in on those actions that you feel good about for sort of being Northbrook specific, being appropriate for Northbrook, whether it's the village staff itself or the community-wide aspects. So with that, as you go through and review these actions together, I encourage you to try to be free with yourself. Don't worry about being too scientific about this. I've done this a number of times and if you just use sort of a certain cadence and go with your gut instinct on these, it goes a long way. If there are any that you just feel uncertain on how to rank it, just put uncertain and move on, right? Because we can continue to work this as we go along. When we reach the end of the time frame here for each subgroup, if you have not completed the review on all of the actions, what I'd encourage you is to reserve a minute or 2 to decide how you want to complete that review. A couple of the options are you could set up a second team meeting to spend an hour or 45 minutes or a half hour to complete the review. You could enlist a shorter group, sort of a go-to group for completion of the review process. Or you could take the remaining actions and divide them up evenly amongst yourself and everybody take 5 actions and go and review those 5 actions against the criteria or whatever number it is. There may be other ways too that you guys come up with that feel good to you as a sub-team. But keep that in mind as you're going through so that at the end of the evening here, if we've not completed the review of all of them, each sub-team has a feel about how they would like to handle completing their review thought process. Okay, so is that clear to everybody? Is there any questions whatsoever?
Hey, Ted, I have a question. So looking back at the original carbon study, it looked like there's way more potential for and need for reduction in buildings and energy than there is, say, in waste. So I mean, it seems to me, is that a fair statement?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so with that in mind, shouldn't we be giving more time to buildings and energy? I'm being on that commission. on that subgroup is not why I'm bringing that up. It seems like we should be spending more time where the bulk of the work, the opportunities lie. If waste is not that.
Can I interject on this one?
Sure, go for it.
It's my understanding, yes, on the greenhouse gas, that buildings and energy, we may get the most bang for the buck for that particular criteria. However, there is a plastics issue, and that the greenhouse gas calculation and computations don't entirely take into order on this. And so waste, we're all going to see something about our own particular focus that is more deserving. But I think we should pay equal regards to them in order that we get the best answer at the end of the day.
I think that's a beautiful answer, and I would also add to that just a bit and indicate too that so of course climate action is not just mitigation. We are talking also about adaptation capacities. So for instance, things like green space have both mitigation potential as well as strong adaptation potentials. So there's those aspects that we want to keep in mind. And in terms of sort of when you talk about time spent, I think each team probably there's going to be different amounts of time spent on this task or any of the other tasks. We will probably find that when we're all said and done, the numbers of actions that are included in the CAPT plan are going to vary from sector to sector, which will reflect the complexity or the needs of that sector. So there's a prioritization of all of these sort of considerations that will kind of come out in the end, so to speak. Does that make sense? And I have to excuse myself for 1 second. I just realized I need to get the sheet to break everybody up into groups. I'm sorry, just 1 second.
Okay, I know Aaron has a question, but it's a question that only Ted can answer. Does anyone else have any questions that I can try and answer while we're waiting for Ted?
Can I make a comment?
The comment period was during the public comment. Sorry, I just want to try and make sure we.
It's regarding the waste issue, because methane gas is like 5 times more. Anyways, just to put that in there as part of the discussion.
Are there any other team members that have a question about what we're about to go do in the breakout groups?
I think Ted's back now.
Ted, yeah, Aaron has a question, Ted, for you.
Ted, you mentioned that there might be a backup for some of these. I'm looking in the building and energies file that is out there, and my column doesn't exist any longer.
Okay. Yeah, there is a backup. I'll send you the link in a moment.
Okay, I've got a backup myself, but I don't know if anybody else looked through their files yet, if they're seeing all of their comments or not. If anybody else noticed that in there. It's the other two that I'm in, they are there from your link, just not buildings and energy.
And also scroll, if you can, scroll down to the bottom where they're in red, which are where duplicate.
I don't even have a column any longer.
Okay. Okay. I'll look into that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other team questions before we go into breakout groups? And then
I have one.
Yep, sure.
Just a clarification, Ted, we're not we're not eliminating any of the actions that are on your consolidated list at this point. We're just ranking them.
Yes, you review
And then
them.
eventually we'll get rid of the least valuable ones.
That's right. And by getting rid of, it can be all sorts of things. We could decide to create a secondary list that's like we'll get to this after this primary list of actions is complete, or we may decide to remove them altogether. So there's different ways that it can be handled.
Okay.
And for now, everyone, Ted has allotted for each breakout session 45 minutes. Does that work for everybody, or do you want to do 30-minute breakout sessions like last time? Given that we're going through and ranking the importance, is there a preference if we're doing 30 minutes or 45 minutes?
I think we're going to need the 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I think Ted is getting us into our first rooms right now.
Yeah, just one more second. I'm sorry about that.
And then when you guys are doing your breakout groups for, remember to create, designate a person kind of as your note taker to remember to report back afterwards, kind of what your top items were that you kept during your ranking.
Do you think this would be helped by one of us sharing a screen and just going down and ranking with by people? That's what I would figure.
Yeah, that's a superb way to do it.
And for members of the public, while we're in breakout rooms, members of the public that are not on the climate action plan team are not able to go into these sub-team rooms. We'll be back in 45 minutes, so if you want to wait for us when we come back and hear what we report back. Otherwise, the YouTube recording of this meeting and the meeting summary will get posted on the village website. It'll be up by Thursday. It takes a long time to compress the YouTube video.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry for the delay here. I think we've got everyone assigned here. And okay, here we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Ted, you've got me in waste and I am local food, and I'm not sure if you've got Chan assigned to anything.
I put Chan in transportation just because it was looking like there wasn't a staff person there, but I can change that.
That's fine. So Chan can do that. I am supposed to be local food though.
Okay.
And then for group 2, Chan will be buildings and energy.
I'm sorry, just a sec. Oh, there you are. Okay. Okay. Chan's going to be at what?
Chan will be buildings and energy for group 2 because I'm health.
Okay.
And for group 3, he's economy.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the central room.
So I will help discuss some summaries while Ted gets everybody into our next breakout room. I know for our local food group, I'll just give a little summary if that's okay, Trustee Ross, that we made it halfway through our list, we're going to be having a secondary Zoom call, just the local food group, to finish the other half. But we found the tools really useful going through, and it was nice to see a condensed version of our action items. Does someone from the waste group want to give a summation?
Sure. I think that was the shortest 45 minutes. There was just so much to go through. We realized when we had about 2.5 minutes left that we had barely scratched the surface. And so we're doing something similar. We've divided them up into different subgroups, and we are each taking one or more of these subgroups, and we're going to refine the list down and meet back together again. There was just too much to go through.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. And who do we have from the transportation and land use to kind of let us know how your discussion went?
I'll go. So we ran out of time before we figured out what we're going to do. But same idea. We're going to email each other and figure out how, if we have to go have another meeting, or if we're each going to rate them and take an average. But we ran out of time to figure that out.
And for those of you who maybe aren't in front of your email routinely right now while we were doing this, just so you are aware, Tessa did send out an email that had the Northbrook action screening criteria in its full context. So as you're going through that, you can read what those 5 items are in their full context as you're assessing everything. So that was really helpful. So thank you for getting that sent out. Did anyone have any questions on this process?
Yes. So Ted, the general question we still had 90 items. And a lot of them still seemed like some were duplicate or related to other ones, but we decided to stop the conversation because we weren't getting anywhere. We decided rating things, but we're trying to figure out, should we condense further before we rate?
Well, we can definitely condense further. We crushed out probably half of the actions. There were quite a few. There were like 400 that were saved. And some of them, it becomes difficult for us to have a sense if it was saved for a reason, if somebody really wanted to talk about it. But we could take another pass at crushing it down. And that could happen a couple ways. I could go through a more aggressive crushing and, run the risk of stepping on somebody's toe accidentally, or I could work with a couple members of the team to go through and crush them down, whatever is most comfortable for the sub team.
Because there were a couple instances where none of us remember saving the item or what it was actually talking about in a couple cases.
The saves are still off to the side somewhere, so you can see where it was saved.
And Aaron, will you ask?
Yeah, one of the questions we had on kind of how we can consolidate this, would it be possible to create, so what we were thinking about is if we aren't able to meet together, could we each individually rate these and then merge that somehow together so that it creates an average?
Yes.
Is that something that your group would do? So what we were just thinking is we create a tab for each member and then each member scores. But then I think the whole merging functionality is at least beyond my Excel skills.
Yeah, so we can do that. What I would do is just have everybody save to their own desktop a copy. And then what would have to happen is you can't change where the actions are, so that we can figure out who's rating who. Because then what I'll do is I'll just go grab the ratings from everybody and reference them back into one Excel document.
But could we make that its own tab within the Excel document? So if you look at the transportation one, you'll see 2 tabs.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of each of us downloading it, could we create our own tab, duplicate it, because then everything's in the same order?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. My only hesitance is that sometimes these Excel files get kind of weighty, but I think that will probably work for just one sector.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the other option we were talking about, isn't there a way to save just one copy And if we all assign each of us a specific section to fill out, then we just fill it all out on one document.
Yeah, you could, that would be another approach, is that you could say, well, I'll take 1 through 10 and you take 10 through 20 or what have you.
But where do we get the single document to work off of? Because we each have our own right now, right?
No, you're working in the action finder.
Right.
So you would go in the action finder on the climate action plan page and break it up.
Oh, so
per
that's
section.
one copy by itself right now, is what you're saying.
Correct.
So we could just do what we were doing when we were discussing it. Use that same form. Just everyone stays to their own specific items.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could just break it up numerically. I'll take 1 through 10, you take 10 through 20, or however you want to organize it, and then everybody would be you would be seeing how people are filling it in as they go.
That seems like the easiest way.
Yeah, and because your section still does have a lot of actions, I encourage you to rate aggressively. So don't be afraid to give something poor scores if you just have feelings about it. You know what I mean?
Hey, Ted, is it okay if we, as a group, a sub-team, condense some of our items ourselves? Or if we eliminate some action items that we gave such low scores to that we think are not worth maintaining?
Absolutely. And if you just read it and you say, oh, I don't want to maintain this, you could just type in, delete or whatever.
Strike out.
Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly.
And some of them, can we edit those action items?
Please,
as
absolutely.
well?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If you're rating it and you're thinking, this would be a lot better if we changed these words, or, we were trying to catch things like if it said Flagstaff, clearly we're not talking about Flagstaff, or if we knew of local partners, we were trying to change the text, but some of that hasn't been caught yet. So as you read the actions, if there's any edits you want to make to it, feel free. Absolutely.
So can I just do a shout out real quick? Transportation, maybe we can just start an email chain offline and figure out how we want to move forward with this, and we'll make the tech work.
Sounds good.
Okay. So just looking at, I'm just trying to break out, okay. I'm missing one person. M. Farrell.
Madeline.
Can
you
hear me? Yep. Sorry, I'm only in the waste management group, so.
I'm sorry. Okay, all right.
No,
Cool.
it's okay. Thank you.
So we've got everybody created. Any other questions, comments, sharings? Okay. Thank you very much. And we'll swirl everybody off starting now.
Madeline.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Back to the center room here.
Okay. So I think similar to the last recap, as Ted's getting us back into our next groups here, did anyone have any questions about what we just did? Or, if there was anything anyone wanted to highlight from their group, but I think at this point, just discussing, I know in the climate and health group, as far as we got, has resulted in we figured out a way to break up the remaining action items for the group to go over prior to March 1, so that will be completed. I don't know how the other two groups handled. Sorry, there was only one other group, the building group, during this breakout session. I'm guessing they clearly didn't get through all of their items. So did the building group come up with a plan on how to finish addressing the rest of their items?
We believe so. Tessa has volunteered to identify basically random lines, and each of us will go through there, put comments into columns directly next to it. and others will circle back through there and respond to those gradations. So yes, it was arduous.
How many items were in the building and energy table?
134.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Down from 400.
Yeah,
Got part way to line 30. It's all fine.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions before we go into the next?
I guess I have a comment or a question. It seems like the tasks that we were given today did not fit within the timeline that we were given. And I know part of the commitment to being on this group is having homework on the outside. But it seems like a lot, being that we're all on 3 subcommittees. And so I'm wondering if there's any flexibility, if we all do some pre-work ahead of time for us to come together at the March meeting to complete the task. And by pre-work, I mean, we load, people divvied up, they load in what they think, and then we use that next meeting to discuss and finalize.
So the March meeting, these will already have all been rated. Ted, correct me if I'm wrong. We will have already rated, everything will be completed prior to the March meeting. And the March meeting is where we were going to discuss which entities would be best suited for implementing action items. Correct, Ted?
That was the original idea, but we can completely flex that. So, for instance, one approach would be that we could use the next workshop to complete the review. Maybe if people have a chance to kind of do a little pre-work, kind of get your mind into it or make your own notes. We could use the next session to continue this task and complete it. And we could handle identification of potential partners and roles of responsibilities in a different way, where perhaps we could collect input just on a sector by sector basis. Everybody on the sub teams could identify, these are partners I'm aware of in the community that I think could help some of the actions in here, and then I could take that under advisement and take a stab at identifying, based on the potential partners that are identified, where they might be a good fit. So we could handle that way. Or the alternative is to try to finish this task out prior to the next session. If we can pull it back at least a handful of days, then what we can do is take this short list and make it an even shorter list. And then assign potential roles or advocate partners to that shorter list. So either approach is fine. It's really up to this group to feel how they prefer to do the next step.
Another idea, the way that the climate and health group just broke up the line items for everyone to individually rate their specific line item. While you're in there doing that, if you think of, for the ones you're rating, what agency would be best for implementing that, and have that information ready for our next meeting on March 8th, that would shorten up that discussion. So as you're rating your 5 line items, think about who the agency would for each of those to implement it.
That's a superb idea. If a team does break it in, because then each person's looking at 5 or 8 or however many actions, and all that content can be there. I can modify it so they're right next to each other, so it's easy to see where you put in the rating, and over here are the kind of the roles that you might think about. So that would be another approach, which could be quite good.
Ted, I've got a question about, I'm jumping ahead. The end result that the public's going to see and they're going to review, is it going to have all these actions, or how do the actions actually get rendered down into something that the public gets to read?
Well, so that's where this is the beginning of that. So as you're ranking them, we will eventually decide, where's the cutoff point, and that numerical cutoff point can have a little bit of flux to it. is a combination of both what's a good number. I mean, if something scores a 1 out of 5, that's probably not worth putting into the plan, right? But is a 3.5 or a 4.2 the cutoff point? That kind of comes a little bit into the artwork of, well, how many actions make sense that are a digestible plan that we can accomplish in 10 years, right? But basically, once the rating's done, as well as the GHG modeling at the strategic level and the actions that are appropriate for that, it's kind of a potpourri, and we'll come back with a recommendation as to which ones maybe look like they should be making the cut and which ones we might suggest you can put on a sort of potential next time list kind of a thing.
Do you have like a number that is suitable for each one of our 7 categories? Like how many actions are you going to limit it to?
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, you know, each strategy having, you know, 3 to 5 actions per strategy is a fair bit. I mean, that's a pretty good number. It's going to vary depending on the specific strategy and the specific sector. So, you know, in buildings, it might be, you know, 40 to 60 actions, something like that, maybe, depending on, I mean, some actions are, you do it once, you're done. Some actions are continual things. So it depends on the nature of all of those actions. You know, in food, climate economy, they might be, maybe they're, you know, 15 to 25 actions, something in that neighborhood.
Got it.
Ed, I'm just curious, are we just a dumb bunch of people from Northbrook that we can't get this done on time? Or is this typical, or is this because we're online and not sitting in a conference room together?
Yeah, it's 2 issues. One is online. I have found when we used to do these in person, it just functions a little bit differently because everybody can run around with a marker, and it's a little slightly more fluid exercise than online. Is a little bit harder, and I find a lot of variation on that. And the other issue is that, I mean, you guys actually, so you did a fantastic job of really kind of thinking out lots of ideas, which is awesome. And then now that's where it makes it a little bit harder for us to kind of go through and whittle it down collectively here. But certainly nobody's stupid. It's a very smart group here going on. So it's not bad.
I just an observation, you know, when we did our first one on transportation and land use, we did start by trying to fill out each individual action. And it took a long time, but I think there was a lot of benefit to doing it together and interacting on it. As opposed to, I think basically after that one, we ran out of ability to meet the time frame. We're splitting them up and doing them individually. So, you know, I'll take 10 and somebody else will take 10, and we're going to accept basically everybody else's answers unless we have a deep ingrained issue with it, you know. So I'm not sure we're getting the benefit of the collaboration that
It's true.
we got on the first
Or
half dozen or something.
I was going to say, not even the collaboration, but just, it's not collaborative effort, but like running around with the markers is kind of what we were talking about in transportation land use, right? Where we're going to each put our information into the different tabs and then hopefully compile that to get averages, right? So that it shows a little bit more consensus than when in buildings and energy, we're thinking, okay, I'm going to take 8 and the next person takes 8 and the next person takes 8. We put our thoughts in there and then people can comment, but I don't know that it has the same synergy as the averages do.
Right.
So I kind of agree with what Len's getting to. Yeah.
So I'm just hoping that, you know, doing it that way will give us a good product still. And that'd be my concern. I'm not, you know, I don't know that anybody on the phone call has more time to spend on this than we are at this point. So I'm not sure I have a good alternative.
Yeah, I think my suggestion would be there's 3 general approaches. One is the approach that I think it was buildings and energy was taking, where everybody takes a section, do those, you know, handful or so of actions individually, you know, and that can happen sometime over the next couple of weeks or whatever. So hopefully it's a comfortable pacing for everybody. And then the next session, you'll find the list hopefully sort of whittled down yet further based on rankings. And then we could talk about potential partners and responsibilities of implementation. Approach number 2 is we continue the task next session, and we'll handle roles and responsibilities in a different way. The third approach is we can add another meeting and do something here in the next couple of weeks to finish the task, and then keep our workshop 4 where it was to talk through roles and responsibilities. And we're super happy to support it whatever way feels good to the group.
I guess, does the group want to have another group meeting like this to deal with all 3 of the sub-teams between now and March 1 versus how we've just broken them up in between things?
I think what we need to do is what we already planned. Every individual gets a group to do and analyze. And then at the next meeting, since like Len said, we don't have the collaborative effort in that case, the next meeting could be used, since all the scores are already done and we're not using this time to make the scores, we can just review what everybody put in and make adjustments as a group.
Well, but the next meeting in March was supposed to be to work on the next step. So if people want to look at the scores as a collective, we need to fit in a different meeting.
Or we can.
Ted also said as we go through, if we thought of things, we could add in who the good partners might be as we're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
to shorten that, I would think that we would want to. It's a combination of that. I think, Steve, what we need to do is go through them individually, shoot a note out to the group when you're done with your section. Say, I'm done with my section. It'll serve also as a reminder to others to do their sections, but also everybody in that group also needs to look at that, how that person graded that in order to make sure there aren't any arguments or differences in the grading system, because I think we're going to see a lot of different people with emphasis on different things, grading them differently and potentially skewing things. So I think you need that collaboration. And what I'm hearing is that really kind of needs to happen before the next meeting on March 8th.
Or Ted said add another meeting.
Or add another meeting in between.
The other added meeting has to be before March 8th.
Do people want to do should we just set up a meeting on the 1st? And, if it's a light meeting, if people have already gone through it, then it's a light meeting. We can do that.
Could this be done as a simple survey where each group has these? I mean, they're in an Excel doc now, right? But if they were in a survey and you could pick 1 through 5, label them up, get your averages, and then that drives the discussion that takes place. I mean, it's another step for administratively speaking.
That would be great.
That would ensure,
I don't know how to do that. Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know if that's outside the scope of Pale Blue Dot, or if that's something we can try and figure out in our subgroups, or.
When you say a survey, can you explain what you mean by
like
that?
Survey Monkey.
Right, like a Survey Monkey. So you have the criteria that you listed, and then 1 through 5. And then that subgroup's scores come together, and it kind of lays out what that group was thinking and where things lie, if it's a 5 or it's a 1.
Well, that potentially solves for the skewing that you would get from
From one person taking just these 8 things, right? You're getting a little bit more of a consensus, but not groupthink.
So you're saying that each person would. I'm sorry. You're saying under that each person would be giving their ranking on each item still, but they would be doing it individually.
But it would be a click, 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 click. It would just be a 1 through 5,
Okay.
right? A very simple.
Yeah.
Patty, go
It's
ahead.
my, it's my feeling that that would double the effort, and then we'd have to go back and do it together anyway. I personally feel that we are building up speed. We have an understanding of the process. You'll put in that last component. I vote for a meeting on March 1st. I think there was an enormous difference between my subgroup 1 and my subgroup 2 and the speed and the ability to fill it out. And I vote for a meeting. I think we'll get all views together and know what we're talking about as one voice.
Found the comments of other group members really helpful and informative and helped me formulate my views on things. And so I would support another meeting because I find the collaboration so helpful to the whole process. And I think we will get a better product with more collaboration.
I think that I just want to keep in mind that the people who said having a second meeting to go over discussing, we have to remember that the sub-teams we just came out of, building and energy had 3 times the amount of items to go through than health and climate. And so that group may still need to go through all their stuff on their own so that when they meet for 45 minutes, they can still knock out their items. It's a difference between how many, each sub-team has a different number of items.
But so like for local food, we were just going to meet on our own anyways. Maybe this would be too difficult, but if we try to set another meeting date, but then some subgroup decides they don't need it for whatever reason, they don't have to, that subgroup doesn't have to meet.
Well, and I think to Michaela's point, like, I like the idea of having a due date because I work better under a deadline. But then I think, for the groups like building, transportation, or energy where we had 130 items, we would still have to do our homework before March 1st or whatever that meeting is, and then use that March 1st date to air any grievances, because we're probably going to agree, hopefully, on more than we're going to disagree on. And so we can knock out those agreements at least via an email, and then the disagreements via the meeting.
My intent was, yes, that each individual do their own assigned portion, absolutely, but then coming again together to discuss before we go to the next step.
One more
and I
collaborative.
think whoever mentioned the idea of each group doing their own chunk that they were supposed to do, each individual do your own items, and then tell the group as a whole, email everyone saying, I finished my items. That way everyone can read them. Take your own notes of the ones that raised a red flag for you so that when you meet with your sub-team again, you can say, these were the ones that concerned me, and you can just go straight to those discussion points on March 1st then.
Good idea.
The other thing that we had talked about was putting in a row or a column, which would have the commenter, the person who put in the initial evaluation, and then put another column with comments. And each person could put their comments directly in that column with their initials so that it would serve as a reminder of what's going on.
Yeah, I can add that on all of the spreadsheets so that they're available.
Okay. I will send an email to the food group still. If we want to still meet offline, I'll send a separate email. We can discuss that separate.
So it
but I
feels
think
like
it sounds like everybody else, you all know now what to do for your respective sub-teams work. And
Well,
then
the only
we're going
thing-
to send,
In transportation, I don't think we assigned somebody to assign the tasks.
I was just going to ask that. And then Tessa's taking care of buildings and energy.
Right.
And I can send an email when I'm done assigning, so then everybody's ready to go with whatever.
For buildings
thing
and
they use
energy?
next to. For buildings, I could do transportation and land use as well.
Are you okay? Perfect. Thank you, Tessa.
Yep.
Okay.
Tessa, you're just going to tell us which ones we're going to do, assign them? Is that?
Yes, I'll add a column that'll have like your name next to the ones that you're gonna rank.
And what about people who weren't attending tonight, who were on a subgroup, Tessa?
So everyone was here. I took attendance. We were only missing, excuse me, member Letter,
Right.
member Patak, who is unsure if member Patak is quitting the group or not, and member Robson. So I would honestly just go with who was here, and label with the people who understand what we're even talking about, to be honest.
Wait, are you including all of that in that, Michaela? Everybody who understands what we're talking?
Nice.
It's 8:20, people.
Yeah, we still have another sub
Okay.
team to do, everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
So we can think of a date here, maybe the first, but we can kind of let that sit for when we get back from the other one. So I think I've got everybody assigned here, and we'll open everybody up. If I'll wait here to make sure everybody gets swirled off. So.
Thirty minutes of just sub teams only.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it may be, if we do just sub teams only within 30, are you thinking like we do 3 rounds of 10 minutes or just?
Oh, no.
No,
I think
no.
each sub team's probably gonna need 30 minutes.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an hour-and-a-half session. Yeah, absolutely.
What
Yeah.
did I do?
I think before then, the hope is that we'll have it ironed down and see which groups do need a subsequent meeting. But I think at least each of the groups will need to go back in and kind of normalize and discuss each other's score so that the scores are relevant with respect to each other.
Exactly. I think that sounds perfect. So just sort of related to that, I've pulled up the screen just to show. So except for the 3 that you guys were all just in, and Tessa had already added this on 1 or 2 of the groups. So we've added in a column, and the 2 that, or the 3 groups that you're just in, we'll add also. So there's 2 columns added. Some teams may or may not use this, so depending on how you've decided to break up the responsibilities. But so there's an assigned column and a comments column. So in this instance, I thought I was reading the decoder ring, so I just copied the assignments there, and we can verify if that's correct with this group. But so this would, if your team is breaking it up individually, on this column here, which is column O, and I'll send out an email with a screen grab on it, we'll tell you who's going to be reviewing the action. And anybody has any comments, as you guys were saying, if you just want to put in your initials and then whatever comment you've got related to the reviewing, that's awesome. If you would also like to, while you are doing that, on the agenda, we had a couple next step things, which we're just, like starting to think of the aspects of implementation, which are who might be the best party to take initial responsibility, to take the front responsibility for that action, and who might be or what might be participants, advocates, potential partners, important resources that can help make that action come about. As you go through and review these, if you have ideas about there that you want to plug that into, that's awesome, and I definitely encourage you to do that. That is what our March 8th meeting was going to be talking about. So the more that can get plugged in, then the more conversational that session can be. So if possible, while you're finishing the reviews, if you can plug in your thoughts on these first 2 columns, that is perfect. If you can't, though, we'll work with it, right? So yes.
Sorry, in the comments column, my only concern is if someone has typed a comment in, and I come in and just start typing in that box, it's going to go away. So people need to know to go up to the field above next to the FX function thing at the top and add their comments there. Otherwise, you're going to negate everything anybody else before you might have tried to contribute in that comment column.
Or you can simply double click in the column and it'll edit in the column.
Perfect. Thank you, Bob.
That's
my
comment.
something new for the day. I love it.
That's a great
So
comment.
if you double click on that, there you go.
Yeah.
Love that. Thank
But
you.
that's a superb point. We just need to be careful to not accidentally delete somebody else's comment. If you do accidentally delete a comment, just undo, because I think you'll notice immediately that, oops, geez, I think Bob's comment just disappeared.
That's probably the best thing that could happen to anybody.
Okay, a little bit on these two columns. Again, so as you're rating them, if you want to fill in your thoughts on these two, that's awesome. Primary responsibility, so that is the department or entity that we think would be the best fit for really kind of taking charge to be the leader. Does not mean that they have to do it on their own. And that may or may not be the village, depending on what the action is. Maybe it's something that we're saying, hey, really we need the county to take leadership on this, or the watershed district, or, some other entity.
Sorry, I'm going to chime in. The park district, the library, high school district, elementary school districts.
That's what I was thinking.
That's for the group to think about in those terms, okay?
Exactly, that's exactly right. In an ideal world, we want just one entity in that column. Don't worry about if during this process, if we end up with 10, then I'll work with everybody to kind of help us, get that rectified. But ideally, you want one lead. And then in this column, which is the potential partners or advocates or resources, it can be that same list of characters, but now it's folks that maybe they could be very deeply involved in it, but maybe just not necessarily the front slot, or they could be somebody that has resources that could be applied to it, or they could just be an entity that we think is going to be interested in participating, and we want to make sure that they're notified or communicated with about it. So that's a little bit more of a rangy category. And that could have, three entities, 10 entities, whatever is appropriate for the action. Okay. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yep.
Okay. So each one, you'll see that.
Robin has a question.
I have a so those potential partners, do you want the businesses of like UL or Allstate or like big companies to see if they have interest?
It could certainly be, absolutely. And the other thing I'll say too is that the way that we would tend to position that is that we are not committing anybody to it, unless of course if we're saying it's a village department or something like that, then clearly that's a commitment that we can be making. But the potential advocate or partner could just be somebody that we hope will want to participate, or we think would really be awesome to work with us on that. But we're not committing them to it, of course. Typically what might happen is one of the first things in implementation would be, well, let's look at all the first actions we want to do, and let's go talk to those advocates and say, hey, we have this thing, we'd really love to see if you'd like to work with us on this, and you put together those kind of committees, those relationships. Were there any other questions on that? Okay. And clearly, if anybody has any questions while you're doing it, let me know. I will send out an email. I'll even use the screen grab of this and kind of point to the columns to make sure everybody feels comfortable. And so then I think our next steps are for teams to sort of complete the reviews, and each team, I think each team's got slightly different ways that they like to go about doing that. So if you're unclear at all, just send a note to Michaela and I, and we'll make sure we get it figured out. Or you can, of course, contact your sub-team directly. But let's try to get those completed out. And then I think we're saying March 1st do an hour-and-a-half meeting. We'll just come in and break into subgroups to go through this. And then we'll still have our
Is
March
that at
8th.
6? Starting at 6, you think, Ted? Is that what you were saying?
I think
hour
so.
and a half?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to assume, but
Yeah, so can everyone in the group raise your hand and leave it up while I quickly look if March 1 at 6 o'clock works?
Gotta go look. I'm pretty sure it does.
And just leave your hand up because I got to flip through 2 screens. Sorry. Yeah, this is a majority, so we're good. I'm going to roll the dice. Do you guys want to do before 6 o'clock? Keep your hands up if you're saying 5 o'clock.
I don't care.
yeah, both.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care.
All right, so we could do 5 o'clock and start at 5. And food group, I'm going to still send an email and see what we want to do. So. All right, so March 1st, 5 o'clock, hour-and-a-half, 30 minutes per sub-team. We'll have our work done ahead of time. It's just to discuss the hot button items.
You're gonna send.
Any other questions?
You're gonna send out an invitation, Michaela?
No, I will not, but Ted will send a Zoom for that.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to do Zoom.
You'll see 2 emails coming out from me here shortly. One will be just a follow-up, just kind of recap what we're thinking our next step is. And then the next one will be an invite, a Zoom invite for that March 1.
And the
Any other questions?
March 1 is closed to the public, right? Period?
I don't know, we can do that. It's gotta be open meeting, right?
Right, it's still a meeting, but we're not having any other discussion and we're going straight into sub-teams. We will hear from the audience as normal for 2-minute discussion, but we're just going into sub-teams and the public is not allowed in the sub-teams as usual. And we're not reporting back. There's nothing to report back. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, can I confirm that the other subgroups all got our topics assigned?
Yeah.
So I don't know that we did it for the transportation land use one.
Tessa's going to send that out. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. Are we set? Everybody, does this feel clear to everybody? Does it feel right?
And I will send an email when I'm done assigning all the names so everyone knows you can get started.
Thank you, Tessa.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I think that's what we
Great.
have.
Thank you.
So you'll have a couple follow-up emails, but thank you very much, everybody.
And
Thank
everyone,
you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody, for
Bye.
great
Good night.
participation.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.